It's a challenging time to be a teacher. We don't get paid a lot, the days can be long and exhausting, demands from students, parents, admins, and districts can be intense. There's always room for improvement and there is always more to do. There are always new procedures to learn, new programs to run, new strategies to master. But it's when our fire burns the lowest that we remember our purpose. We teach because we're resilient. We teach because we're problem solvers. We teach because investing in kids is one of the highest callings we can imagine. We teach because we know that the classroom can be a place of magic and possibility. We teach because we have an unquenchable fire for learning and a passion to share it. We teach because our colleagues are some of the best human beings we will ever meet. We teach because we have an opportunity to influence the global citizens that will make this world a better place. If you're still on fire for learning and growth, join the Teachers on Fire Roundtable for conversations that will warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your practice. You'll hear from real people and real educators with real solutions, not make-believe perfection, but ideas, inspiration, and a path toward change and transformation in K-12 education today. My name is Tim Cavey. I'm an 8th grade teacher, assistant principal, and the host of the Teachers on Fire podcast. I'm inviting you to join us at the Teachers on Fire Roundtable. Because you matter, your voice is important, and we are all better together. Well, good morning, Teachers on Fire. Thank you for joining me for another conversation that will warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. I am so excited to bring you my guest today. She's a national award-winning educator and the author of Be Their Warrior, helping all students succeed through culture, community, and being strong. Thank you for joining me this morning, Pamela Hall. If number 1 is burnout and 5 is on fire, how are you feeling this morning?
Good morning, Tim and everybody. So in my life and in the way that I get to impact students, I'm a 5, totally on fire. And emotionally, though, I have some things going on in my personal life with a family member. And I'd say I'm about a 3, because when you're caring for an adult loved one, it's a joy, it's an honor. It's scary, though, when you get a diagnosis that no one in the family was expecting, and it's emotionally exhausting. But once again, we get to choose. We can still be sad, but we get to choose how we're going to handle and navigate those moments.
Thank you for sharing that and being so real with us, Pamela. And yes, I love that take that we do have choice. And I want to come back to that later in this conversation. Well, if you are joining us live or on the replay, I want to say thank you to you. We so appreciate you coming along for the ride. Let us know. Check in this morning. How are you feeling from 1 to 5? Are you closer to that 1 of burnout or 5 on fire? And if you're like me on spring break, hopefully you're closer to that 5. That's been really wonderful for me to get some good sleeps this week. I want to say hello to Peter Cavey over on LinkedIn. Hello, brother Peter. We've got also on LinkedIn Ashwin checking in. Good morning to you. Shannon is coming to us on YouTube from Gray, Prince George. It's Gray here too, Shannon. She says, I'm fired up today, loving my restful spring break. Lots of personal, professional learning in the last week, plus rest, exercise, and family and pet time. Great intro, Tim. Well, thank you so much. And she's also sharing her condolences to Pam. Yes, sending positive energy. Look who else we've got. Livia Chan, a great friend and educator over in Burnaby, coming to us on Facebook. Great to see you, Livia, as well. All right, we're ready to jump in and get going here, Pamela. So first of all, congrats on the publication of Be Their Warrior. Love this title, helping all students succeed through culture, community, and being strong. Why is that image of warrior so significant? That strikes me as a little bit aggressive. Talk about what it means to be a warrior.
So it is aggressive because a warrior doesn't give up.
That's right.
And the thing is, we can do a few things for a student, But warrior is someone which most educators are. They will advocate for students, and not just a few students, all students, even that difficult student, that student that gets under your skin and annoys you. A warrior advocates. And if you, as a person, cannot reach that student or find a way to meet their needs and bring out their gifts and talents or believe in them, then you're a conduit
Mm.
to find a way. So a warrior does not ever give up. A warrior is an advocate and a fighter. And our students, it's a warrior believes in those students. And you know, our their future depends on having a warrior, someone who believes in them and never ever gives up on them. And our future depends on it because our students are our future.
So good, Pamela. And yes, we all need that warrior. We need someone in our corner who believes in us. And I remember through my master's program coming across that statistic or that fact that a huge factor we never think about or we never heard it early in our careers perhaps, but a huge factor in student success is simply the answer to the question, do you know anyone in the building who believes in you? And if that was a yes, that made a huge difference in the success of that child. Livia is saying, Pam's book, so good and so resonated. Love the idea of being a warrior. We need to be relentless, just like ants. All right, love that. Okay. Well, you also write about the power of unwavering, life-changing relationships with kids. Can you share a story of how you've built one of those relationships?
So it's hard to narrow it down, Tim, to just one story. So I'm going to
I'm
try
sure.
to give maybe an overview of three if there's
Okay,
time.
sure.
So when I was teaching first grade, I currently teach STEM to 700 students, pre-K through third grade, but I've been many different roles. When I was teaching first grade, I had a student come to me who was deaf. And apparently, before he came to me, his teacher put him off to the side. I can't even imagine this. I think the teacher just did not know or understand because I know nobody would want to treat someone like that. But anyway, his mom cried because I included the student who was deaf in everything we did. And I had the sign language interpreter teach all the kids sign language so that that student had friends without having to go through the sign language interpreter. And that's being a warrior for kids. It's meeting their needs, giving them a sense of belonging, and just helping them. And so that student, I was fortunate enough to go to second grade with that student. So that's called looping. So I had that student for 2 years and we built a relationship with the family. And that's what I'm talking about, unshakable relationships. That student actually went through a cochlear implant. And we went through, our classroom was like a classroom family. We went through that whole journey with that student. Now let's fast forward many years later. The sign language interpreter and I went to that student's graduation. He
Mm.
put us in his sports car. Remember, he's deaf. He put us in his sports car and he drove us through the Starbucks drive-through and ordered our drinks and everything. And those relationships, that was over 20 years ago, and they still stay in touch with me. The students in those classes still stay in touch with each other and with me. Those are unshakable relationships. When
Mm.
you invest, when you find your students' gifts and talents and you highlight them and you believe in them. I know we talk about this. We say relationships are king,
Right.
but you got to do it intentionally every day, just not the greeting at the door. What else? What more? So, another quick analogy of that is I had a student who enemy of the Cheshire Cat. I write about this actually in my book, but he had a big personality and usually ended up in some kind of classroom catastrophe because he just could not hold still. Bookshelves falling over, to everything falling over. Well, tapping in, he talked nonstop. So tapping into that, talking nonstop, when we had an event, I had him as the greeter and holding a sign so he could dance and move and greet and talk. And he ended up saying, and these are his words, so it's quote, he's like, Mrs. Hall, I love our expo. I love school now. And so when you find what they're good at and then channel them toward it, they're going to love school. They're going to want to come to your school. They're going to want to come to your class. And they'll get better and better because they know you love them and they'll care for you. And then the last student who was extremely traumatized. Actually, it gave me anxiety when I had to think about how to handle him. He threw furniture. Um, I think he bit me once. Many things. So any student, and sometimes we don't want to deal with those things. But I just kept loving on him and figuring out what is it he needs? What is it he needs? Super low in reading and wouldn't read. So one day he's like crawled under a table, would not come out. I'm like, okay, I'll get under there with you. And I got under the table with him and he read. So the thing about being a warrior is we can't be caught up in what we think they should do. What we do is we meet them where they are. We know we still have the goal. Like I had the goal, buddy, you're going to read today.
Right.
That's happening. But instead of forcing my way of how he's going to read, I just crawled under the table with him. And oh, yes, I still had 20 some other first graders. But we just do what we got to do to meet their needs.
Oh, my heart is so full already, Pam. Those were wonderful stories and great examples. They really make the point well that that warrior is going to go forward and do whatever it takes. There is a way to reach that kid, right? And we hear that around, and we need to be reminded of it. Well, something else that grabbed my attention recently from you, Pam, is this idea that in a world of factors that we cannot control, and God knows there's a lot we can't control right now, we can control things like our attitude, our gratitude, habits, and our network. I'm so interested in this list, the habits and the network especially, but talk about these four quickly if you could. What is it about these four that really makes you want to focus on them?
All right. So I'll start with gratitude because that's a great way to start your day. And honestly, there are some days I'm not thankful. There are so many things going on some days in my personal life, just like you all. And then also at school lately, um, the whole system for airflow and everything in my classroom has been broken. So no matter what the temperature is outside, it could be 40 degrees. My room lately has always been 80 degrees. It's like a sauna and we've been sweating.
Oh, no.
And so I can focus on that. And believe me, I do, because it is really uncomfortable. But that is not going to do my students any good.
Right.
And if I keep talking about how awful it is in our room, then they are too. So just gratitude of, I got a great job. I get to make a difference today. What kind of difference am I going to make? And I always say it's your daily trio. Take time to thank. And the trio is three things. So even in my personal life, this morning I woke up and it's just part of a habit. It's a routine. Three things I'm thankful for. And I move my body because we work together. So it's habits. What is a habit that helps me be grateful is I move my body. I went outside before you and I are talking and gathering together because I knew if I went outside, I would be filled up and I could be the best that I could be And maybe the jury's still out on that. But I know one thing: if I didn't go outside and if I didn't move my body, I'd be worse than I am right
Right.
now. So whether I'm great or not doesn't really matter. I'm better than if I had not done it. Because you
Mm-hmm.
see, anyone who performs well or wants to perform well prepares well.
Mm.
Athletes prepare. Even if you're a hobbyist, you practice. If you play golf, you practice and you prepare so you can play golf even better. We want our students to be ready for a test. So, once again, anyone who wants to perform well prepares well, and that takes intentionality and it takes our attitude. It's a daily renewing of the mind. So, I once heard Zig Ziglar say that bathing isn't permanent, right? So neither is our attitude. Just because we are thinking things one day doesn't mean that tomorrow it's going to be that way. It's every day
Mm.
being intentional about taking every thought captive. Now, I know some people are probably thinking, oh, that's toxic positivity. Well, let me tell you what, we have a choice, right?
Right.
And I used this analogy earlier. We have a choice of letting the current in the river, if you go whitewater rafting, there's a current. We have a choice. We can let that current direct our outcome and even pull us under. Or we can paddle and we can direct our life by paddling. We can direct the outcome, right? And it's with a plan and with a purpose. And we can take those moments in an ordinary life and make them extraordinary with an impact. So yes, and the way you do it is you acknowledge the crud in your life. We all have yuck in our life. So just acknowledge it, but don't stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference between being positive and intentional and taking your thoughts captive and acting on them, opposed to, oh, life is just roses. No, I'm not saying that. I am saying be intentional. And when
Right.
it's not roses, it's okay, say it. I say it to my colleagues. I'm like, man, this really stinks about my family situation. But here's what we're going to do about it: come up with a solution.
So good, Pamela. And I also wanted to ask you too about, so you've sort of addressed, I think, the first three there, and you talked about making gratitude a daily habit. Could I press you a little bit on the network? Because I'm a big believer, and I know the people watching here with us are also believers in building that network. But talk to that teacher who maybe doesn't have much of a network, maybe hasn't built much of a community inside or outside of their building.
So I'm glad you brought that up too, Tim. So I find people, it's the O and strong, and it's also the G, go deeper. So I have right here, it's a Proverbs, and it says, the intelligent man is always open to new ideas and he looks for them. And that's a G, like going deeper, professional and personal growth. So I was always told you are the sum of the five people that you hang out with and
Mm.
what the last five things you've read. So some people say I'm a Pollyanna because I don't watch the news, but for me, that's a negative in my life, and the O in strong is omitting negative. So instead of watching the news, I find people like you, Tim, that are positive and uplifting and putting out good information. Find the people in your building that are where you want to be, right? Some people are just storms. They walk around, they have a storm cloud, and even when the storm clears, they just want to find another storm. I can love those people, and I do. And I work with them on a team, but they're not my go to.
Right.
I find people that are where I want to be. because when I go hang out with them, I'm stretched and I get better and they encourage me. Also, in my network, actually, I have three dear friends that are not educators. Oh, what? And that is fulfilling because then we do life together. It's not all about education, right? We are whole people. I was thinking it would be super great to write a book. Now, hopefully, nobody steals this idea, but there's books out there like The Whole Brain Teaching. How about the whole brain educator, right? We're
Right.
more than just a teacher. We've read that in social media, but just find the people that are light. Find your
Mhm.
sunshine.
So good. Absolutely. And I'll say, sort of a personal perspective on this too. Sometimes I hear about teacher Twitter, and I spend a lot of time on Twitter. And sometimes I hear the critique that, oh, teacher Twitter is becoming this sour or this negative place. And my response is, well, it's all about who you're following. It is all about who you're curating into that community of educators. So take another look at the voices that you're following and make some, you might have to make some curation decisions there to make sure that, hey, this is the kind of input. I'm not saying, and I know you're not saying, that we don't acknowledge difficulty, not at all. But yeah, we do make choices, and it's a mistake to sort of think of ourselves as a victim, right, of the influences around us. We're not a victim. We definitely can make some selections there to make sure that we have that light and life and hope in our lives and in our conversations. Oh, thank you, Livia. She says you both are my sunshine. We so appreciate you. Talk about sunshine, one of the biggest sources of it, Livia Chan. If you're not following her, get on that immediately. Well, thank you to our live and replay audience for joining us. If you are enjoying this conversation, smash that like button on YouTube, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. That's the single best way to support my work. Let's get into strong, Pamela. You sort of teased it a little bit. It shows up on the cover of your book. So break this down for us. What does a strong teacher look like?
So I'd like to give a little backstory first.
Sure.
Um, I came up with strong in one of my lowest times. So a few years ago, I just had so many needy children, so many mandates, and just so much that I couldn't control that I actually broke. I ended up, and I write about this in the book, I ended up in our school parking lot just sobbing. I tapped out. I had to call out. It was like 1:30 in the afternoon. And I sat there humiliated because we teachers, we it's really hard for us to ask for help, I think. And after just crashing and total burnout, I came up with strong. And strong is an acronym for S, stop and remember your why. It's 6 steps. T, take time to think. R, rest and revive. And O, omit negative. N, never give up on you or your students. And G, go deeper. It's professional and personal growth. Now, strong isn't a cure all. It's not going to take away all your problems, but it's a proactive plan that will help you avoid the burnout, and it will help you go from that burning out, that it will help you go from depleted to delighted because it's a proactive plan. You see, self-care has 6 categories, and I'll name those in just a minute. And strong encompasses those 6 categories. So I have a question for you all. Have you ever binge watched Netflix, but yet you still feel depleted? Has that ever happened to you, Tim?
Who, me? Yes. Yes, that's definitely happened.
Right. And here's why. And I think that self care is misunderstood. A lot of people think self care is binge watching, it's manicures, pedicures, bubble baths. Those are great. I
Hmm.
do them. They are great. But here's the thing, those are self soothing,
Right.
those are coping mechanisms. When I come home from a hard day and and I'm eating chocolate like nobody's business, that is not self care. That's self indulgence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is self soothing. Self care, on the other hand, has six components, and they are these categories: physical. So, your physical body, what do you do for your physical body? And it only takes moments. But for me, I move my body, I get outside, and that's what I did this morning. Psychological. So that's where that attitude comes in. What's the story you're telling yourself? What are you replaying? Emotional, because guess what? That physical and psychological is tied to your emotions. Your emotions are tied to the physical and psychological. So the fourth thing is spiritual. And now, spiritual doesn't necessarily have to do with believing in God, although I do. But spiritual is just getting in connection with maybe going outside, nature, something that yoga, anything that revolves some meditation and social. So self care has the social aspect. That's why when you spend time with a really good friend, or I do, or today I've been intentional about planning for family time, we're going to be revived because that is our social being, self care socially. And then there's self care professionally. What are you doing for yourself professionally? The way we stay on fire professionally is we keep growing, we find new things. And if you're stuck and you want to leave education, maybe find a new position. That's what
Mm.
I did actually. When I had burnout, I didn't exit education. And I don't want that for you. We need you. We want good educators. So instead of just giving up on education, take a bigger look. Take a look at those six things to be strong. Take a look at making a move that is in a different area. For example, I went from a core classroom teacher to a STEM teacher. So find a new challenge. I found out when I have a new challenge, I am fired up. So find
Mhm.
out what fires you up and do it.
I've got a theory that every educator shouldn't be in the same exact position and role or context for more than 7 years. That's kind of my unofficial, unproven, unresearched position. But I do think you're right that we need that renewal. We need that sense of challenge and stimulation every so often. We need a new season. And in my conversations with educators over the last few years, I've come across that story often that it isn't always about leaving the profession. Sometimes it is just about going to a new school or district, going to a new community and a new vibe, a new philosophy. And that can really, really transform and reignite teachers. So if you're listening and maybe you're some of that disillusionment that Pamela described is resonating with you, maybe think about what that new season might look like for you. Well, as we start to wind down here, Pamela, let's get into some of these rapid fire questions. I want to back up and just make sure that I acknowledge a couple of great comments here. Margaret Murray on LinkedIn says, thank you so much for confirming the idea of finding people who are like-minded that are sunny and not clouds. Yes, it's important to acknowledge and value people in our community of learners, but find positive ways to keep moving forward with bits and pieces of what works well with building relationships. Well said. And JT on YouTube, not sure who that is, but JT, thank you for being here. 7 years, way too old, long, maybe 5. Yeah. So
Can I
he's
jump
with
in
me,
there? For me,
or
it's
she. Yeah.
3. I think you
Okay.
have to
All
know it's
right.
your personality.
Yeah. Okay. Even just 3. Call it. Whatever. Yeah. Move. Time to move on after 3. Okay. All right. So, thinking of as we start to wrap this up here, let me see where I am in my notes. What thinking of wellness? Here we go. Here, what is one app routine, daily practice that gives you clarity and rekindles your fire, Pam?
So I will get to that. I would like to first acknowledge that self-care isn't selfish. All right. You
Right.
see that saying all the time. So it's not being self-absorbed, and it's not selfish to have a proactive plan to do that. All right. And self-care is not one more thing to put on your to-do list. I've also seen educators write, I don't have time for self-care. Well, here's the thing. If you don't have time to take care of yourself, you're going to have to make time for illness. So being proactive is way better than being burnout, sick, and then trying to figure it out. So,
Can I just got to jump in there because we've got Josh Tovar here, and I'm pretty sure he just tweeted this morning, make time for your wellness or you will make time for your illness. So you two are on the same page.
woohoo! And I didn't even read that. so, so it's just making it one small habit at a time, part
Mhm.
of your rhythm and routine. And so to answer your question, what are some things I do? So I make sure that I move every day. So today, before we met, I used the U Version Bible app. And on the U Version Bible app, you can choose reading plans, and it has a daily devotion. So for me, that meets the spiritual category of my self care. Going outside meets the physical, psychological, emotional, and my spiritual categories. Even if it's just 5 minutes, I know everybody can find those 5 minutes because that sunshine changes the attitude and it helps you have gratitude. So, those are some things I do. And then every school day morning, I start the day with yoga, and I like to use it's on YouTube. It's Yoga by Adriene. And so those are some habits that I have instilled in my life that meet those categories of physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, social is having I put on my calendar. So I'm not always social every day. All right. So let's be real with the time that we have. But once a month, it is on my calendar to go out with my two dear friends. And we laugh, we drink coffee, and that fills me up socially. So you think about what is it that you need socially? Put it on the calendar. And family, we schedule either Saturday or Sunday a family dinner because my children are grown up and we have to be really intentional about getting back together again. So, those are some things I do. I would encourage you just choose one of those six categories and begin working on that. In strong, same thing. Start with one of those strong steps. And then once you got that, it's called habit stack. Put another one on it and then put another one on it.
I hear a little bit of James Clear there, and you hear a lot in what Pam was saying about calendar. We've got to schedule, we've got to be intentional, and I know our listeners and viewers, people like Josh Tovar and Livia Chen, would definitely agree with that. So we've got to make sure, because it's not just enough, right, Pam, to be open to a habit. It's not just enough to say, oh yeah, I love to go outside. But if we're not planning it and actually putting that in our calendars and being super intentional, that's not going to happen with the kind of life-changing consistency we need. Whose voices are inspiring you right now, Pamela? I know you are listening, you're reading, you're watching. Who is really lighting your fire?
All right. So I have two categories. So for education, there's so many, but these are the highlights. And it's you, of course. I
Oh,
like what you put out, Tim, because it's
thank you.
sensible. It's I don't always think logically. I'm more like, woo! But what you put out makes sense. It's
Mm,
logical, it's sensible,
thank
it's
you.
actionable, and it's motivating. So
Mm,
you would be sunshine, definitely not clouds. And I'm an EduMatch author. And so I really, really love my EduMatch family. They are diverse. Sarah Thomas is
yes.
inspiration to me. She
Yeah.
says, let's bring everybody to the table. Everybody's welcome, no matter your background or ability. And that makes my heart sing. And um, teacher goals, I really love their mission because their mission is about SEL, student voice, anything that would help a student, right? So, teacher goals is all about being their warrior. And they have humor. Who wouldn't like that? And of course, the Teach Better team, Danny Steele for leadership. He's just so practical and easygoing. I'm sure he may not be, but he comes across that way, just practical. And Todd Whitaker.
Yeah.
But in my personal life, my go tos are Bob Goff. He has a podcast called Dream Big. And that is the G in being strong, is going deeper. I want to grow. I'm human like everyone else, and I doubt myself, and I go, I'm not going to be able to do it today. But he brings in all these people that have overcome challenges, and they pump me up and they make me go, I can do it. So I would really encourage that. Donald Miller on Instagram, it's called Story Brand. He's a business guy, but I just love his practical tips on Instagram. And he just released a book called Hero on a Mission. And it's all about we can choose our story, right? You want a better story? Make it happen. We all want meaning in our lives. And the way that we have a happy life is we need to create that meaning. So it's not about what you wear, what you look like, comparing yourself with the edgy rock stars. What is it in your life that brings meaning and purpose? Go do that. And
We've
then,
got, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, and the last one, which you've already said, is James Clear, Atomic Habits. I think that book is worth rereading over and over and over again to keep it in the forefront of your mind.
Such a thoughtful guy. One of my favorite emailed newsletters. I look forward to James Clear popping into my inbox every Thursday. So many gems from him. I want to say hello to Sarah Thomas. You mentioned her. She has popped in here. I think Livia must have given her a tag there on Facebook. Great to see you, Sarah. Love the EduMatch team, Mandy and others over there. Thank you so much for everything you're putting into the education conversation. Thank you for publishing Pamela's book. And I'm getting lots of love here from people like Josh Tovar and Livia Chan. Thank you so much. You are all so much of my sunshine. Well, Pamela, what is next for you? I know you've got a lot going on. Talk about an upcoming project or activity that is firing you up.
So I have a couple. What's firing me up right now is really just the impact I get to make daily with the
Right.
students that I have. But in addition to that, is opportunities to help educators to keep, like what you do, Tim. Let's keep that fire burning. You all are amazing educators, and we want to help you grow and keep doing what you do instead of being tired, burnout, depleted, and wanting to give up. So I get to do that by traveling around to schools and being motivation. One of my next events, it's called Motivation and Mimosas. So I'm
Okay.
going to do that at a local um, tap house.
All
And so
right.
that should be fun. And long term, I really have a passion for students knowing hands on lifelong learning, in addition to helping them believe in themselves and being that warrior. Students don't know where their food comes from for the most part. Even just last week, um, on a video, my students saw somebody milking a cow and they said, yuck. And so I had to explain to them that's third graders. And so we had this conversation
Wow.
where your food comes from, and that's our future too, right? And and then this girl says, well, where's my almond milk come from? Does that come from the cow? And so my next project that I'm planning is I want to do a children's book series. I'm not going to tell you who I want to partner with, but I
Okay.
want to partner with somebody incredible that tell stories from people around the world that are making an impact. It's multicultural, and make a children's book series about where our food is coming from.
Mm.
And make it, there are books like that, I'm sure, out there, but not in our voice.
Yeah.
So any of you out there, make sure you tell your story in your voice. Somebody needs to hear your voice. And just this has no connection, but Livia is sunshine for me. So I just want to publicly thank Livia.
An amazing person. I've given many shout outs and will continue to do so. And by the way, Livia, if you're still with us, I think we have a new name for our summer Teachers on Fire meetup in downtown Vancouver, Motivation and Mimosas. If that's not trademarked, Pamela, if that's not trademarked, I think we may have to take that. Well, as we close, Pamela, and this has been such a boost of sunshine and motivation for all of us, so thank you so much. But what are the best ways to connect with you? Where can we do that?
So the best way to connect is, of course, Twitter, and all social media platforms. I'm at Pam Hall to Inspire. So I'm found on Instagram, Twitter, a tiny bit on Facebook. But I'd love for you to check out my website, because starting tomorrow, I'm doing a 7 blog post series about demystifying self-care. And so if you'd like to go to my website, you can join hundreds of others on the newsletter, which is Inspiration in Your Inbox. You'll be alerted when those blog posts come out. And each of those blog posts will have those 6 categories. So one blog post will have a category, and then actionable steps of what you can incorporate in your life that falls under that psychological category, or the strong steps.
And just give us the URL for your site again, Pam.
So it's at Pam Hall to Inspire, like my handle, but .com.
There we go. Thank you again so much, Pamela, for this conversation, for everything you're putting out there. And as you acknowledged, it's not to say that everything is perfect in our lives, but we choose our story. I like that way to finish this conversation. We choose our story, and there are things we can control. So get connected with Pamela Educators. Again, for everyone joining us live today and on the replay, thank you so much. We are grateful for you, and take care. Hey, in these challenging times, make sure to share an encouraging word and keep that fire for learning burning bright. Bye-bye, everyone.